everyone. Sorry I'm late.
Morning.
I'd like to call the 9:30 Wednesday, February 10th meeting of the North Carolina ABLE program to order. Hope everybody can hear me okay. The meeting is being recorded and subject to public records request, and there will be a public comment period for organizations or individuals to address the board. Several requirements that are placed upon us by law for remote meetings. We'll take roll call by name. If you leave the meeting at any point, please announce your departure. If you return, please announce your return. Likewise, state your name before speaking. All votes will be by roll call, and without objection, anybody who makes the motion or the second will be considered a yes vote. Finally, text or other recorded communications between board members during the meeting, even on personal phones, are public records to the extent they concern the meeting. Our ethics, awareness, and identification of conflicts of interest. I'd like everyone to please look at the agenda and the material and see if you have a appearance or an actual potential conflict of interest regarding matters that are before us. Hearing none, we have statement of economic interests that have been updated for the following board members: myself, Commissioner Grace, Member Wright, Member Kinsley, Tom Causey, as well as Ms. Boskin, who was the Commissioner of Banks designee. And in the appendix, you'll find these SCI reports and evaluation letters, which will also become part of the meeting minutes. With that, we'll proceed with joining me in our Pledge of Allegiance. So, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. We'll start with the calling of the roll.
Yes, good morning, Treasurer Falwell. We do have Commissioner Ray Grace on the line. I'll call each person's name. Thank you, Commissioner. Ben Wright.
Here.
Good morning. Melinda Plew.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Marquita Robertson.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. And Chris Egan.
Morning, this is Chris.
Very good. Treasurer, we do have a quorum.
Thank you all for joining us. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of November 12th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay. And a second?
Second, Melinda.
Thank you, Melinda. So it's a motion by Commissioner Grace, second by Ms. Plew. Any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Treasurer Falwell, your vote?
Aye.
Ben Wright.
Aye.
Thank you. Marquita Robertson.
Aye.
Thank you. And Chris Egan.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll now go to item number 4 and turn it over to Mary B. with to discuss the ABLE Alliance Manager Search.
Very good. Thank you, Treasurer Falwell, and good morning, Board. We're under tab 2 in the meeting materials. This is just an update on an ongoing project that we have had. We've touched on this a few times in prior board meetings. As you know, the current program manager for the National ABLE Alliance, which we are part of as the NC ABLE program, is the Census. We have that team on the phone today. Their contract does expire at the end of this year on December 6th. The National ABLE Alliance did decide to issue an RFP for these services. That RFP was issued last December 1st of 2020. We did receive bids in by the deadline of January 25th, and those bids are now being reviewed and assessed. It is anticipated that Illinois, as the lead state in the procurement, in council with the other states within the alliance, will determine by mid-March, March 15th or so, the decision around the award of that contract. Following that decision, as a alliance member state, this board will be asked to decide whether they'd like to continue in the alliance and commence negotiations for an implementation agreement with the provider, or to assess whether there's a different structure that the board would want to pursue. Staff is working closely, of course, with the alliance, and will come back with a recommendation as we know more. And in all likelihood, we will need to call a special board meeting to meet the deadlines required for completing the implementation agreement. So there's no action required today, but we did just want to continue with that update and certainly answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Questions from board members? Our current administrator is,
A Census is
and
the program manager.
didn't the Census just go through an acquisition or a merger in the last 3 weeks? That was announced.
I'm not aware of one in the last 3 weeks, but we do have Rich De Silva on the
Okay.
line. I know there had been one previously.
I may be mistaken, so we'll get to that when we get to Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
I'm sorry. I was just going to intervene that there have been a couple of acquisitions within the last several months. Census seems to be in acquisition mode, but they were small and related to the retirement side of the business.
But didn't one of them involve BB&T Truist?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that's why that's a North Carolina company. That's why I was ringing a bell. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for clarifying my mind there. So.
You're welcome.
Okay. Stay on the line in case you need to clarify my mind again. We'll now go to any further questions with Mary's report? Okay.
This is Ray,
Yes.
Treasurer Falk. This is one quick question. I'm wondering what, if any, additional vetting we will do of administrators that go up.
Question
North
was,
Carolina
what additional vetting would we do in addition to what Illinois, as the lead of the consortium, is going to be doing?
Thank you, Commissioner Gray. So I am participating in what the Alliance is calling the small group contract team. So I am representing our organization as we go through those RFP responses. It's anticipated that there will be a finalist round as well as a BAFO round, best and final offer, before a decision is finalized. Just given the state of the pandemic, there is not a plan for an on-site due diligence trip that would normally be part of a procurement, but there will be a virtual meeting with those finalists is the plan at this point.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Follow-up to Commissioner Grace's question, is it public record who the responders are?
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
We're still under the confidentiality agreement
All right.
as an active procurement.
And I think I should have known the answer to that before I even asked it. And it's pretty accurate to say that no member of this consortium can actually make it on their own as far as the economies of scale. There still is great value in this consortium in terms of the number of participants.
That's definitely my opinion.
Okay.
Yep.
And that will translate into the fees and whatever ultimately get negotiated with whoever it is that would be bidding.
Exactly. By working with a larger group, we're getting those economies of scale of both assets and number of accounts.
And is this contract up for renewal, or did it have any extensions to it?
This was the original term There was the opportunity to extend, but the Alliance wanted to go out for RFP.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wasn't in your department.
No, that's yours.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, legal updates.
Good morning. I have two legal items for you. The first is the annual report that's required to the General Assembly that's required by the North Carolina ABLE statute. This is similar. It's in the draft is in your materials. It's similar to the reports approved and sent by the board the last several years. There's an introduction, structure of the program, and we've updated the performance similar to last year's. Call out on the accomplishments, the changes, items you've heard about in board meetings, train the trainer, community partnerships. With the board's approval, it'll be signed by the chair and sent to the General Assembly, and copies to actually it's several entities at the General Assembly. But glad to take any questions on the report.
Okay. Questions? All right, do I hear a motion to accept the annual report to the General Assembly?
So moved.
Chris.
Okay, Chris makes the motion, Commissioner Grace second. Sorry?
I'm happy to second.
Oh, thank you. It happened, I couldn't tell who was saying what. So with that, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Treasurer Folwell, your vote?
Aye.
Ben Wright?
Aye.
Melinda Plough?
Aye.
Marquita Robertson?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes.
The second item is it's a brief update on federal ABLE regulations. In September, the final federal ABLE regulations were published by the Department of Treasury. The draft regulations were actually in 2015, so it's been a while. They were effective on January 1 of this year, but programs have a 2-year transition period. And we're working with the Census, also working with the National Association of State Treasurers on reviewing and implementing any changes in the regulations from our current practice. But let me just briefly highlight 4 items that have come up in the discussion of the regulations. The first is around who can open and manage an account. As you may know, under the North Carolina statute, not only can the account owner open and manage an account, but an agent under a power of attorney, legal guardian, and parent, or as of change to the statute last year, sibling. The Treasury regulations lay out a hierarchy of sort of first to last who's authorized under the regulations, and it goes down from the agent under the power of attorney, legal guardian, spouse, parent, sibling, grandparent, representative payee for Social Security. And so the issue really is around reconciling the two approaches, and 3 items in that regard. The federal regulations refer to unable to establish. You don't get to the hierarchy unless the account owner is unable to establish an account. So the questions around, appears to mean lack capacity. Does that require a court determination? or is it left to individual programs? In other words, state law, which would be consistent with the state's role in deciding capacity issues. The second issue around opening and managing an account is does the regulation with this hierarchy require these entities to be able to open and manage an account, or does it just permit it for purposes of whether an ABLE program is qualified under federal law? The third item is around certification. There is a self-certification process for guardians, parents, et cetera, under the federal regulations. We currently require documentation for guardians, power of attorney, parents, that sort of thing. So, more to come on working through that, both once again as an alliance and with a census. The second topic, just briefly, is around disability certification. As a reminder, eligibility for ABLE is based on either SSI, SSDI eligibility, or a disability certification. And the federal regulations take the approach that anyone authorized to open an account, that hierarchy I mentioned, can provide that certification. And that's different from the current approach taken by a census, so that's something that we're working through as well. Third is around contributions under the ABLE to Work provisions in the federal ABLE statute. As a reminder, the standard contribution limit is based on the gift tax exclusion, which is currently $15,000 a year, but an account owner can contribute more in addition to that amount, up to the amount of his or her earnings, or the federal one-person poverty limit for the prior year. And so the issue addressed that I want to highlight under the federal regulations is the certification process. There is a certification by the account owner or one of those authorized individuals in the hierarchy regarding the additional contributions under the ABLE to Work provisions. In specifically a certification that the account owner is employed and the compensation contributions did not exceed the limit, the federal limit. And then finally, just briefly, on the qualified disability expenses, it continues the emphasis on broadly defining QDEs. And in particular, I thought one of the things that was helpful was it included a broad statement that was in the proposed regulations regarding the definition that qualified disability expenses include basic living expenses and are not limited to items for which there is a medical necessity or which solely benefit an individual with a disability. And it also brought forth an example of that, of a smartphone that would help someone with navigation and communication. That's a brief overview of a few of the items. Glad to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to turn it over to Christy. Welcome.
Good morning, this is Christy, and I wanted to just go ahead and share some highlights of this past quarter. As far as outreach, we did an event which we do and have participated in previously, but this year it was a virtual affair, so we had a virtual page and booth. And I wanted to highlight this because we saw a huge spike in visits to nctreasurer.com, the page that we have for NC ABLE at the time of this event. And I think that's important because it really shows the impact that these partnerships can have. We are continuing to build a foundation of organic growth on social media, and we've been very consistent with visits and follow-throughs to the registration site, nc.savewithable.com. And on the next slide, it really highlights the analytics of the Save with Able, where people can find out information and also register for accounts. We've been very consistent with the number of unique visitors. Page views have seen an increase consistently over the last quarter. And what I think is very interesting is that our average time on the site has also increased by a full minute. I think this is also coupled with the fact that we have 4.5 minutes spent on the NC Treasurer website page. So that's about 10 minutes worth of people learning about the site, learning about NC Able and discovering the benefits. The referrals are also very interesting. We do have organic growth, organic visits to the site, like from Google or Yahoo and things like that. But our top referrer is the NC Treasurer page, which again speaks to our partnerships that we have, because that's the URL that we give to them to find out more about ABLE. And then the others are also resources that have referred their site visitors to our site. And all of this leads to the fact that on January 11th, we surpassed 10 million in NC Able account owner assets. We were at 10,073,000. And as of February 6th, we were at just under 10.8 million. So we've seen a huge growth. And even looking at the General Assembly letter, we were at 9.7. We have $1 million in asset growth since that letter was written.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That letter's gone out, correct?
Yeah, I think
We're
it's in
waiting
here.
for adoption at this meeting.
Should we upgrade it then? I mean,
Ken, if you'd like to. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't we put
It's
the
$1 million. Why not
Huh?
be more current?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
We can do
it's-
that. Do we
it's-
need a motion to?
We would add this in, it's an annual report, so we would just add this in addition to what we have, or just update it as of the date of whatever.
I'll entertain a motion to allow staff to technically correct the letter going to the General Assembly to reflect the surpassing of $10 million in the ABLE program.
So moved, Melinda.
Thank you.
Second, Ben Wright.
Thank you, Ben. Sorry about that. I just wasn't thinking about that earlier, and
That's okay.
I should have. So, motion is second. Any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Okay, very good. Treasurer Falwell, you ready?
Aye.
Commissioner Grace?
Aye.
Thank you. Marquita Robertson?
Aye.
Thank you. And Chris Egan?
Aye.
Very good. The motion passes.
Thank you. And I would like, so it surpassed 10 million. Okay,
It's
I'd like-
10.795.
yeah. I'd like for the first time.
Yes.
Okay, so I'd like, if you would, just think about putting the word surpass in there.
Sure.
So, anyway, thank you, board.
And I do have one other.
Yes.
Just one other quick thing. I mentioned at the last board meeting that we were working on an ncable.org website, and we have made great progress on this site. I do have a development site available. We still have some work to do, but I would like to go ahead and send it out to the board members after the meeting so that you can take a look at our progress. We should be able to go live with this site within the next 2 weeks. So that's going to provide a whole different level of marketing and awareness for NC Able.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to hand the gavel over to Tom, and we're now ready to hear Rich from a Census.
Great. Thank you all. And for those that don't know me, who may be new committee members, this is Rich DeSilva. I am the National ABLE Alliance Relationship Manager here at Census. Before we get into the numbers, just a quick few notes that I wanted to pass along. Number one is that the National ABLE Alliance has surpassed 150 million in plan assets, which triggers a break point in the pricing schedule. So as of January 28th, the program management fee has declined from 32 basis points down to 30 basis points for all participants. We're going to include that in a supplement, and obviously any states within the Alliance, including yourselves, of course, that would like to do some sort of a press release or some sort of an announcement, we'd be happy to review that from a marketing perspective and work with you on content. Secondly, and Treasurer, you referenced the acquisition. I looked it up. It's January 6th that occurred, and I sent the press release to both Reed and Mary, just as an FYI. So if you'd like to take a look at that, it's what's on the Census website. Number 3, references to the final ABLE regs were made. We are working internally with a number of cross-functional areas to make sure that the regs are reviewed. We put together an executive summary that our leadership is currently reviewing that will be distributed to all the states in the Alliance in rather short order. Our attention at the moment is to figure out operationally what we need to change from both the technology and an operational perspective to make sure that we can support this sooner rather than later. Technology changes at our side sometimes take longer, so we want to identify those as soon as possible. But we're working internally as well as with the NAST working groups to make sure that we have a good handle on exactly what has changed and so forth. So that complements what was discussed earlier. A quick census update. We are all still remote, with the aside from our mail operations. The expectation is that mid-year we will be start to return to the offices pending. It's obviously a fluid situation with the pandemic and the vaccination distribution. But the expectation is that we're going to do some sort of a pilot program to send employees back to the offices mid-year. So we'll keep you posted on how that goes. And then lastly, Mary, I believe you had requested that we include appropriations data in this document, which has been done in the appendix. So if there's anything in specific that you wanted to take a look at there, we can certainly go through that. Don Roach, who's my counterpart on the relationship, has provided that information on slide, as you can see, 14. So if no one has any questions on that information, I can jump right back to slide 3 on the metrics. So the story here is a good one. Is contributions were increased, particularly in December, and I think part of it is because we're starting to see people go back to school. Personally, I've got 2 college-age children, and they had a number of their friends take gap years, and now they're going back to school. So you're seeing contributions increase because, for that reason, as well as the fact that it was December. So positive story. We also had a really good market as well. So as a result, we had an asset increase of 18% from the end of Q3 to the end of Q4. Now, as you can see here, we're showing 9.8 million. As we know from the previous segment, that we're over 10 million now into February with market growth and continued contributions. But we're showing an asset growth of 18% from Q3 to Q4, which is certainly very positive. We had an increase in accounts in 77, and as you can see there, we had in Q4 about 112 new accounts and 40 closed accounts. So all in all, a very, very positive story. Slide 4, please. So this is no different than what we have seen in previous quarters. It's very consistent in terms of the mechanism that people use to make their contributions. Electronic bank transfers continues to be the top mechanism by almost double, followed by checks, automatic investment payments, and then gifts and payroll. So this really hasn't changed in terms of order at all. Next slide, please. In terms of disability and eligibility type, again, this hasn't changed either in terms of the order. Developmental disorders followed by intellectual disabilities and psychiatric disorders continue to be the top. What is notable on this slide is that the average account balances have increased substantially due to both the contributions as well as the favorable market conditions over the last quarter. In fact, some of these average account balances have increased by nearly 1,000 which is pretty substantial over the course of just one quarter. Any questions so far? Okay, next slide, please. So in terms of closed accounts, we've had 258 closed accounts since inception. In December, we had 16. Again, there's nothing here that really jumps out at me. It's pretty standard as far as what we expect to see with respect to behavior. 10 additional individuals took full disbursements, so that increased from 67 to 77, which is a little on the high side. I think that can probably be attributed to the uncertainty regarding the pandemic that we saw, or maybe a slight uptick in full disbursements. But aside from that, pretty consistent with what we've seen in previous quarters. Slide 7, please. So this is interesting because the checking account option typically had close to 30% in assets. It's down to 24, and the reason for that is market fluctuation or market growth. With the growth, the aggressive, the moderately aggressive, et cetera, options, they increased just due to market fluctuation, which by default reduced the assets in the checking account option. It obviously doesn't have that same market exposure. So it's 24% now as opposed to 27 at the end of Q3. But again, in terms of the asset size, we see the same, roughly the same allocation, checking followed by growth, followed by aggressive, et cetera, down the line. But again, what's notable is the decrease in the assets in the checking option just due to market change, market growth. Next slide, please. In asset ranking, this really hasn't changed either. North Carolina remains 5th with about 7% of the assets in the alliance. Now, obviously, that number is over 10 million. This is as of December 31st. Pennsylvania continues to lead the charge, and again, I think that can be directly attributed to the appropriations that is shown in the appendix if you wanted to take a look at that later on in the presentation, followed by Illinois, Minnesota, and Colorado. So it's the same top 5 order that it was last quarter. Next slide, please. I'll turn it over to Paul.
This is the treasurer. Let me interrupt. Do you think we've surpassed Colorado, or do you think Colorado went up also?
Colorado went up also, yes.
I mean,
yes.
Okay, so we're still 5th.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, I checked that number before when I saw the growth in the month and a half. They experienced a similar market growth that North Carolina did. Yeah, but it's very close.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Paul Supe, I will turn it over to you to cover the portfolio performance.
All right, thanks, Rich. I'll start here with on slide 9 slide 9. With the market values a little under 10 million at the end of the year. The good part is that the more aggressive portfolios have kind of a higher asset value, so it's probably going to be a little bit more stickier assets. Hopefully, these are long-term horizon for the participants, the assets in this portion of the investment lineup. It was kind of a roller coaster year as far as returns with the coronavirus. February and March, obviously, a large downturn in equities. But we've had a V-shaped recovery, and we actually ended up having a very strong year within the markets, both on the fixed income side and on the equity side. With the more risk-on portfolios actually having the better years, very strong fourth quarter with the higher riskier assets. We got better returns, over 15% return for the quarter for the aggressive portfolio, down to just under 2% return for the conservative portfolio. For the full year 2020, we had returns that ranged from just over 4% to over 15.5% for the year. So kind of normal distribution of returns here. The higher returns go into the higher risk assets. Any questions on the portfolio performance? Now we'll switch to the underlying performance, the next slide. So here we have the equity performance for the underlying equity funds. For most of the last 3 months, it's been the large caps that have been outperforming. So we have the last quarter, they still had a very strong return of over 12%, but it was the small and mid caps really doing well and coming back strong. The small caps were really hurt most in February and March when the coronavirus first caused the shutdown across the U.S. But within the last quarter, they've really come back very strongly and actually had a stronger year altogether in 2020, returning over 30% for the year. Both U.S. and international markets did very well for the quarter. U.S. markets outperforming for the year overall, in emerging markets outperforming the developed markets for the year and for the quarter. The real kind of the lagger of all the kind of the sectors was the real estate market. We do have exposure to real estate within the portfolios. They of course were hurt most with kind of the corporate side of real estate, and we do have a switch kind of within the fund to a more broad real estate exposure that happened after June. First half of the year, there was a little bit more of a exposure to commercial real estate. They made that a broader exposure in the second half of the year. So I think it's kind of more towards the more modern sense of real estate with exposure to kind of cell phone towers and things like that sort, and more kind of modern real estate exposure. So it's much more broad and it has done much better in the last 6 months. Overall, it didn't hurt the portfolio too much and actually had a very positive response in the last 6 months. Let's move to the next slide for the fixed income. So on the fixed income side, we saw positive returns across the board all year through all kind of sectors of the fixed income side, both domestic and fixed income. With rates falling down, that boosts up performance. For the fourth quarter, we saw international fixed income outperforming U.S. fixed income, and we saw over the year longer duration outperforming the short duration. With interest rates very low, we expect this to kind of be opposite going forward. We expect rates to eventually start rising from this point since they're near zero. Our portfolios are more geared on that short side, so we should have some good protection for when rates do rise. Any questions on the underlying performance? The only other point I'll make here is on the iShares International Aggregate Bond. They did lower their underlying expense ratio at the end of December from 9 basis points down to 8. So we'll get a little cost savings there within our portfolio. Now I'll head back to Rich.
My presentation has concluded unless folks had questions about the appropriations. Mary, would you like to take a look at that, or did you want to do that offline?
Rich, thanks for including that in the report, and as you stated, that's on page 14. That was a topic that came up in our last board meeting as a request from the board to include that information on an ongoing basis. So if there are questions from the board, we'd be happy to take them, but otherwise I think it's reference material.
very much. I guess we're now down to our public comment section. Has anybody signed up for public comment?
No, there are none.
Hearing none, seeing none, I'll deem the public comment section closed. Want to mention, as many of you have already received an email that was from Tom Causey on behalf of Mary, maybe I'll learn how to pronounce it before you leave. Bob Figueroa. How's that? Has announced that she's decided to retire, and her effective date is going to be July 1st of this year, and she had a 20-year career with Bank of America. She joined our retirement system in 2012 and has led our team on a number of significant initiatives. And the ABLE program was launched in 2017, but it was worked on many years before that. And now it's a program with over 1,200 accounts and assets over $10 million. And in addition to her ABLE responsibilities that this board's been more attuned to, she also has led the Supplemental Retirement Plan Division, which is the 401, 457, and the 403B program, and has worked tirelessly under my tenure, especially to save millions of dollars for plan participants. And this is obviously not the pension plan, but the defined contribution plan. And under her leadership, we've seen the plans become one of the largest in the country. I believe one of these is actually the largest in the country in terms of numbers of participants, but I can't.
The 401K? Yep.
Even larger than California as far as participants, I think.
I think we're close, yeah.
So now these total defined contribution plans serve on nearly 300,000 participants with total balances approaching $15 billion. So I'd like for all of you in a program and the supplemental retirement programs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Did no one hear that?
I don't know.
They did. They did.
All right. Tom, you want to say anything?
I thank Mary. This is Tom Causey, Director of Retirement System. Thank Mary for all the work she's done and helping me especially this past, year and a half or so, educating me on the different issues with ABLE and other issues. And I'm going to miss her. And her laugh, especially, those of you that have heard her laugh, echoes through the building. So,
Right.
but no, I do thank her for her support. And it's going to be hard to fill her shoes, but we're gonna try. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Any other board members would like to say anything?
Hi, it's Marquita. I'd like to speak. I've worked with Mary, I think starting in 2014, and we worked on many different projects and things together, and really grown to respect and admire her a lot. She's one of the smartest people that I know, and I think I've shared this with her before, and just has a lot to share, and is just an overall great person. And you will definitely be missed, but I'm very excited for you to be entering into this next phase of life. Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you, Marquita. I really appreciate that.
Okay. Anyone else?
This is Chris Egan. Just a couple of quick words, but I've known Mary since you came into the position, at least focusing on NC ABLE, and really have been impressed with not only your openness to learn and to understand circumstances and to become a strong advocate for individuals with disabilities, but to make a point of spending time directly with individuals and families and being present, answering questions, building relationships, building trust, which I think has gone a long way to helping to create a comfort level with opening accounts, and you clearly had a huge influence on people. opening ABLE accounts. So thank you for your commitment, for your efforts, and you'll certainly be missed.
Thank you, Chris. I
Anyone?
appreciate that.
Mary, it's Melinda. I echo all those sentiments. It's been a pleasure working with you these last years. Every time I have sent a family your way because I couldn't answer a question or we couldn't, you have always been more than gracious, and our families that we represent are also going to miss your leadership, but we will carry the torch and hope you won't be a stranger.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
All right, I'm piling in. Ben right here. Mary, you are first class all the way. I feel like this board and everybody involved with this has been in very good hands, in your hands. So you will be greatly missed, but we wish you much happiness in this next phase of life. Thanks for everything.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate all those comments. I do have a little bit more time, so now I feel like maybe I should leave on a high note. I don't know.
Thank you. Mary,
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Well, I appreciate all of those comments. You know, I always think about my time within this department as working as part of a really wonderful team, and that goes for the treasurer and senior leadership, for our SRP team and our ABLE team. No one ever does this alone. It's always the representation of a lot of work from everybody on staff. We're lucky that we do get to work in a very close way, in a very collaborative way. And it's always interesting, you know, Christy is one of our newer folks, even though she's been here for over a year. But just those observations of, you know, wow, this team works so closely together and just such a high level of collaboration, and hoping to not only work hard, but have a little bit of fun along the way too. So I'll greatly miss everybody here, and just look on my years here very fondly, and happy to have been able to contribute. Thank you, Treasurer.
Thank you. Appreciate your service. And with that, not in memory, but in honor of Mary, sometimes I say memory, so that's not correct.
Let's hope not. I'll be careful driving home tonight.
Yeah. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Melinda.
Okay. Thank you, Melinda.
Second, Ben Wright.
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Very appropriate for you two to make that motion and second. So any further discussion? Hearing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Okay. Treasurer Falwell.
Aye.
Commissioner Grace.
Aye.
Thank you. Marquita Robertson.
Aye.
And Chris Egan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion
And
passes.
I apologize again for being a couple minutes late. There's lots going on. So we're hereby adjourned. Thank you for your attendance by phone and in person. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer.